and thank you for your interest in what Mexico is doing to face the storm and overcome the storm. Let me start by remembering my participation in Davos 2 years ago. In this very same forum, as I took office under very difficult political circumstances, I said that we were committed to transforming Mexico into a winning country, to transforming Mexico into a privileged place for investment in the world. I say then that Mexico has everything it needs to become one of the most important economies in the world by the middle of this century. That is the forecast of some financial firms, and that is our vision for the future. I also said it was crucial to implement an agenda of structural reforms to achieve this goal. Today, 2 years later, I'm proud to tell you that we have made significant strides in this endeavor. Mexico is one of the few Latin American countries that is implementing reforms in order to have a more competitive and dynamic economy oriented towards open markets and foreign investment. We have faced difficult times, of course. However, against the odds, we have worked with the Congress and achieved consensus on major reforms. Before this, Mexico lost a decade without any significant structural reform, and now, in just 2 years, we got several of them. First, we passed in Congress a fiscal reform that will increase public revenues by 2% of GDP per year and reduce our dependency from oil. Second, in the same way, a divided Congress approved a far-reaching reform of the public servants' pension system. We have gone from the traditional pay-as-you-go system to one of individual accounts. In order to give you an idea about how important this is, the saving for public finances is equivalent to 30% of GDP at net present value. Third, we are improving the quality of public expenditure. We implemented a system of efficiency indicators. We harmonize public finance accounting under mandatory transparency at the federal, state, and municipal levels. Fourth, we turn our attention to education. We build the Alliance for Quality in Education with the Teachers Union, another reform that many did not believe possible a few years before. This reform, or this agreement, will allow us to start the long-needed transformation of our education system and improve its quality. And last but not least, we have reformed Mexico's oil industry. Even though it seemed impossible, we managed to change the law in order to allow Pemex, the public oil company, to receive foreign participation and investment through exploration and production performance contracts with the company. We also promoted changes in corporate governance of Pemex in order to increase its efficiency and accountability. In short, Mexico is changing and becoming a model country with long-term vision and great growth potential. Today, we are tackling problems that have been overlooked for years. One of the most pressing issues was the rule of law. From day one, I did not hesitate to use the full force of the state to fight crime, including not only federal police, but also the Army and the Navy. Fighting organized crime has been and will continue to be a long, difficult, and costly path that others will have probably preferred to avoid. But we are certain that this is the only way for Mexico to become a safe country, the Mexico that we want. acting with firmness, we are hurting the operational and financial structures of the main criminal organizations in the country. Drug lords are being brought to justice in Mexico, and more than 150 of them have been extradited to American justice. We are hitting them, and we are hitting them really hard. To give you an idea, we have set 3 very exceptional crime-fighting world records in these 2 years. For instance, first, in a single raid, we seized more than $206 million in cash. Second, in a single operation, we confiscated 500,000 bullets and almost 500 weapons, including everything from AK-47 to missile launchers. The third record was set when we uncovered also in one event 24 tons of cocaine. In brief, let me just tell you that the total amount of drugs that we seized in these 2 years will be enough to provide 20 doses to every Mexican, or 66 doses to every young man or woman between 15 and 30 years old in the country. We knew when we started that this war on organized crime will take time, money, and will cost human lives even. The easiest option would have been to close our eyes. We didn't. We decided to take strong actions on organized crime. There is no higher cost than the lack of freedom that we could suffer if no action from the government was taken. At the same time, in order to reestablish the authority of the state, we are upgrading law enforcement institutions and capabilities. And very important, we are fighting corruption inside the law enforcement corporations. We launched cleanup operation, Operación Limpieza, and for instance, we put in jail a former Deputy Attorney General and a former Director of the Federal Police. So, if you see some dust blowing out the windows, it is because we are cleaning the house. Don't worry for that. So another step was a constitutional reform to establish oral trials instead of our traditional inquisitorial system. This reform will provide transparency and fairness to our system. We have also implemented programs to reduce drug consumption among young people. And finally, we are professionalizing our police forces starting at the federal level. We will continue to work to ensure the safety of our citizens and to create the best conditions for investment. And now, what are we doing to face this terrible crisis? In 2008, despite the global recession, Mexico grew above 1.5%. As you know, Mexico has experienced in the past severe crises. However, in today's situations, there is a big difference. We are better prepared than ever to face the storm. And we are well prepared because we did the homework. We have sound public finances, one of the lowest inflation rates and country risk in the region, a stable banking system, and international reserves equivalent to 4 times our total foreign debt. This has given us the flexibility to respond to world events and to respond timely. I would like to mention some examples last year. When the world food crisis began, we increased transfer payments for the poorest families in the country. This measure implied to help 25% of total population in Mexico. When the prices of gasoline skyrocketed around the world, we increased the prices gradually so consumers could adapt to the problem, and now we have reached market prices and stabilized them. And finally, the sharp fall on oil prices. Many wondered whether the Mexican government was going to be able to finance its counter-cyclical policies. Anticipating the drop in oil revenues, we hedged our oil exports at a price of $70 per barrel to support our budget this year. So how is Mexico responding to the world economic crisis? A few days ago, my administration, together with local governments, the Congress, the private sector, and labor unions, we signed a national agreement to face and overcome the crisis. The Mexican government has implemented counter-cyclical fiscal policies amounting to 1.8% of GDP, more than $14 billion, and has induced additional financing to the economy through the development banks for almost 2% of GDP. The program implies transfer to households and business through public price measures and additional investment in infrastructure. Some other measures are extension of health coverage and benefits from the retirement accounts for the unemployed, temporary employment programs, financial support for temporary layoffs, as well as credit expansion to small and medium-sized businesses through developed banks and program for substitution toward more energy-efficient home appliances. In addition, the government expenditure program and rules were changed to concentrate additional spending at the beginning of this year. The federal government has committed to at least 20% of its purchases will be made from small and medium enterprise in the country. We are also working hard to diversify our exports and reduce our dependence on the U.S. economy. And finally, we continue to eliminate barriers to trade. And soon, even in this complex situation, we are determined to turn Mexico into a world-class logistic platform for investment and trade, which will serve as a strategic link connecting North America with South America, as well as Asia and Europe. That is an additional reason to promote an aggressive infrastructure program that will grow even more this 2009. Let me provide you with some specific examples. This year, we expect public and private investment in infrastructure to exceed $43 billion, a historic figure that represents around 5% of GDP. Last year alone, the federal government built and modernized more roads and highways than any year before in the country. And for this year, Pemex, the state-owned company, will also invest more than $16 billion, another all-time high. And we are not only thinking about big public works infrastructure. We are also thinking in human-scale infrastructure. I mean, we are thinking in public schools. For instance, we will refurbish and repair public schools in the more remote areas of the country, reaching 17,000 only this year. And we will also invest over $500 million to build public hospitals and small clinics in the country. And soon, my friends, with these measures, we are not only activating the economy and creating jobs, we are also building a more competitive economy. Mexico's goal is to become one of the most attractive investment destinations in the world. We think that in this particular year, we need to move ahead with greater determination to become a more competitive economy. That is the reason why we restarted the process of opening up our economy. Many countries have made statements about fighting protectionism, but Mexico is one of the few economies in the world that have actually reduced its tariffs even more to increase competitiveness. For the same reasons, we know that we need to move forward to reform other areas of the economy. We need more reforms in the labor market or in the telecommunications sector, among others, in order to reach real competitive markets. In the international efforts to overcome the crisis, Mexico has an active role. We participate in the G20 and coordinate the G5, which includes China, India, Brazil, and South Africa, more than 40% of the world's population. This G5 group maintains an excellent dialogue with the G8 economies. Mexico is also involved in APEC and holds a non-permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council. In those fora, Mexico has made several proposals. First, fixing the financial sector is still crucial to stop the bleeding. We must contain the crisis in financial institutions and minimize its impact on the global economy. Second, it is essential that all nations, especially the developed countries, adopt expansionist and coordinated fiscal policies to offset consumption and investment crunch. However, we need to do so without jeopardizing sound public finances. Third, a reform of the international financial system is required. It is especially important to give a greater voice to emerging economies and to recapitalize and redesign multilateral financial institutions. Fourth, we must prevent the reemergence of protectionism. It is only through stronger economic integration that we will be able to resume the path to growth. Ladies and gentlemen, history has taught us that man has the capacity to overcome any challenge. I'm truly convinced that today's situation represents an opportunity to transform the world and transform Mexico in particular. My government is facing all these challenges with total commitment. We are also laying the foundations for a more dynamic and competitive economy. I'm convinced that this crisis, as the previous one, will be overcome. We are in a cyclical world. Neither booms nor crises are forever. Other times will come, and they will be better. But they will come sooner if we do everything in our power to tackle the causes and the effects of this crisis and transform the economy. This is precisely what Mexico is doing. We know, as a Mexican saying goes, that if you move forward with hope, the roads will welcome you. Si avanzas con esperanza, los caminos te darán la bienvenida. Thank you very much.